Good evening, everybody. All right, looks like my mic is working. Excuse my disheveled look. I've been kind of doing something in regards to symbolism, and rather than doing something quite broad, I wanted to do something a lot more focused. And I titled this as visual symbolism because there's going to be something called auditory symbolism, and this can be in regards to not just the spoken word, mantras, poems, and then of course music, vocals, but also more importantly instruments, and how they're constructed to elicit memories and unconscious emotional responses. So that's how I'm stating things. So I've gotten something written down, which is I'm pretty much going to read verbatim so I don't mess things up because I don't want to get it wrong. Basically, what you see on the screen is what I created earlier, and it's just gonna switch on over. So I'll be moving it once I get to a certain part. So go ahead and look at it. I created so basically the one on the right is basically a material representation of the dark. To focus on just the four material aspects, just in simplification, rather than making it a little more complicated with the fifth element and all that other jazz. All right, so symbolism. All symbolism is a representation that is constructed to elicit memories and unconscious emotional responses. The symbols in and of themselves have no meaning, therefore they have no power. For example, if someone has no knowledge of a symbol regarding either the direct representation of it or the historical context that is associated with it, it holds no meaning. It will not instill fear, hope, hate, love, or any other unconscious emotional response. So many visual symbols have different interpretations of its representation, and that is because there are different types of contexts that are associated with it. For example, we're taking a look at the swastika. In a historical and political viewpoint, many regard it as a symbol of fascism and racism because it was used as the national emblem of Nazi Germany. For those with that viewpoint, it's going to elicit anger and hate. Thus, it'll have negative or evil, quote, connotations. However, in cultural, philosophical, and spiritual viewpoints all over the world, it is a symbol of what is positive or good. The swastika represents many different things to each of these latter viewpoints. But today I'm going to focus more on how I apply the symbolism of the swastika. And I have, what I'm going to show you is the irony in association with the current Christian religion. And don't be offended if you're Christian and I'm not hating, I'm just trying to shed more light on what the current Christian dogma is has done and is currently doing. But, you know, the early Christian philosophy had it right. And I'm going to go over that. Anyways, I keep veering off of what I'm trying to say. Or what I wrote down earlier. Okay. It is ironic because the swastika is a symbol of what is ever changing. Because of the gift of the unknowable God, Tao, or Source, which is freedom. The Nazis represent the direct opposite of that. The inner cross represents static emanations, and within, I can show you that you can see that good, evil, dark, and light, and also if you want to just do the material aspects of that, it's going to be water, earth, fire, and wind. All right, I'm going to veer off against what I wrote. All right, so the inner cross represents static emanations, good, evil, light, and dark. In turn, good represents freedom. Evil represents control, light represents spirit, and dark represents material. The outer angles represent the changes that manifest by crossing into its neighboring faction. The swastika may also represent any manner of things in this way. It may represent the dark or material with water, fire, wind, and earth. One will never have absolute dominion over its polar opposite, hence why it's static, but they may associate with the other in some way from the mixing of various forms. And when this occurs, there's less direct duality in nature. Nature is just the entirety of things, is how I'm saying it. And then there can be some form of harmony, because the more directly polar you are, it's just not very harmonious, right? But the more you kind of go away with that, mix things in with something else, and it's going to be a lot less harsh of a direct conflict. So the irony, so basically the next one is just gonna show you just the different types of crossing over, mixing, if you will, that can occur with the swastika symbol. It's just movement of just kind of going into not really giving up, not really taking control, but just kind of mixing in, crossing into, I guess, into just something that's different, and that can be more dynamic and less static. And therefore, when you have the cross, it doesn't really symbolize any movement. It just symbolizes non-movement and being static and non-changing. But when it goes in with some other force, whatever you want to call it, emanation, that can create something that's a little bit more dynamic. And so that's what the swastika represents. You've got the static emanations, and then you've got the dynamic crossing over of those emanations to be something else. And so this is where it gets kind of bad, right? So I took away the angles, right? And of course, I'm just going to read it straight up. All right. So the irony continues in that the Christian religion cuts off the angles of the swastika, preventing change, which can lead to harmony, and focuses not just on the four static emanations, but on one more so than the others. Which part of the cross do you think the Christian religion focuses on more? Freedom, control, material, or the spirit? What do you think the Trinity focuses on? So this is where I'm saying, don't get me wrong, the early Christian philosophy had it the most correct, which is why it is now the most misguided and the most controlled by dogma today. If Christianity had not been overturned and its faith reversed, things would not be as bad as they are now. Well, either that or it would have been destroyed long ago, like the Gnostics and the non-Orthodox Zoroastrians. So yeah, we've got the symbol of the cross, right? It used to be equalized, right? So it's just four static emanations, and they're all equal. They can't really hold complete dominion over the other. And then all of a sudden, the equal cross ended up becoming the Christian cross, where you can see that it's a lot longer at the bottom. And then, yeah, you could probably say, well, look at Bond, you could have just put good on the bottom, and it would have represented the Christian cross as it's supposed to be. But just look at Christianity today. I mean, do you think it focuses on freedom, or you think it focuses on control? A God that is pretty much giving you freedom, and if you die, well, it's not really gonna do much to you. Or is it going to be like when you die, well, you're going to be judged. You're going to either go to heaven or hell or something else, and based on either your belief in him or whatever, right? So what you may call the unknowable God, the highest, I wouldn't even want to call it that, but Tao or source, whatever you want to call it, just its gift was freedom. It's how, I mean, it's very, I mean, you can even equate it to water. You know how just water is just very free form. Fire seeks to destroy plenty of times, and I think I'll move it back a little bit. Right, you've got, if we look at here we go, there we are. Just kind of the almost direct representation, right? You've got evil, which may equate to fire. You got good equating to water. You've got light equating to wind, you know, like the sky. You got dark, you know, like solids, like the earth. And you know, with the negative aspects of control, right? With fire, you're gonna get destruction. You're gonna get with wind. With the sky, you're gonna get heat or air. I should probably put air instead of wind, right? But with air and water, you know, you can get it can get cold. There can be blizzards and hurricanes. And with water and earth, you know, there's growth like plant material and organic material, or tsunamis, earthquakes, and you know, water goes where it goes. So it's just kind of how things kind of seek each other out. But see how when it's like directly earth and wind, they really don't affect each other. Wind may carry earth material like seeds and stuff, which is good. Water and fire, right? If you put them both together, well, one of them's gonna keep going, or one of them is gonna drown out the other. Usually water wins. But once you kind of get into a different aspect, right? We're focusing on growth, or earth, wind, fire, and water. So, I mean, when you got those on the opposite spectrum of what's dynamically moved over, I guess you could say evolved, however way you want to put it, but like growth and heat aren't really diametrically like very polar opposites. You can have growth with heat, right? And you can have destruction with cold. It's just it doesn't really cancel each other out. It can actually apply to each other in some form or fashion, as opposed to the static manifestations, whatever you want to call it, really don't interact in that way. They're very much staying on their own side. That way, you know, they can't really become absolute over its polar opposite. So I think that is something that's what the swastika pretty much represents, is just what can be ever changing, right? And the only way you could be ever changing is to mix with something else in order to flow, if you want to use that term, the Taoist term, to flow like water. You know, be free and just decide where you go, you know, or rather than being controlled and told where to go, and things like that. And usually that's why we in the case of evil or fire, you know, fire is really powerful, you might say, in the material, but it can be snuffed out. It eventually loses its power. It disappears, and but it can have its uses, which we use today for a lot of things. So it's not necessarily all bad. That's why I don't like saying good and bad. It's more like good and evil, the ideals, the whatever you want to call it. And I don't really say it's right or wrong either, because you have the freedom to choose, and whether it's right or wrong is based on you and the people or person or others that you affect. So yeah, how things got to this point where we just focus on static, one conquering the other, and everything's kind of upside down a little bit, but it's mostly um, it was, I guess, planned on that. And if you watch my previous video and previous video of that with good, evil, light and dark, and Radiant by Ali Murdrakavandi, which I can only access a few pages of what might have been written because of the person who wrote that article, I guess, or had that talk, or whatever. So there you go. This is, it's not the Christian cross. it you could say it evolved purposely to mislead and be misguiding, from something that was, ever changing, right? And good, because, right, there's more harmony in things of being, kind of moving, giving a little, taking a little, and working with something rather than always against something else. And you can see that in the material world if you want to make it as simple as this. There's rather than being just the static sources, I guess you could say, they can become a little bit more dynamic. You see some good things, not just always bad things, not just we would consider change to be good, or hopefully good. There can't be really, there's growth in destruction. Destruction in itself isn't always bad, or we might consider evil. Some people like the heat, like hot, warmer weather. Some people like the colder, cooler weather. So not necessarily good or evil. It's just, preference. And it's when you're living in a colder climate, you're gonna have sources of heat. Right? If you live in a hotter climate, you're gonna have sources of cold, so you can stay cool. You don't want, if you live in a place that has way too much vegetation, well, you're gonna cut it down. Otherwise it's just gonna, just like weeding out weeds, I guess, because you want certain crops to grow, just like forests, right? Sometimes too much growth in that area, the trees are just gonna take more of the sunlight, and allow the bushes and stuff aren't gonna grow as well. So you don't want too much growth, but again, you also don't want too much destruction, like have a place where it's just a desert or it's barren, you can't grow crops or anything like that. So it's just kind of like it becomes more so the symbol of the swastika really kind of morphs into well, it went two ways, right? One went the way of the Christian cross, and the other went into the way of the Taoist yin and yang symbol. And the yin and yang symbol is very much a good representation of the swastika, because once you've changed your, the swastika, or the yin and yang represents flow, and you have a little bit of the black within the white and a little bit of the white within the black, and they're equally kind of opposed. But that's because it has, in some essence, it needs the other in order it to keep moving. If it's just totally static, well, it's not. It's just going to be all one thing. It's going to be a black side and a white side. There's no growth. There's no movement. There's no flow. It's just, I don't know, death. Anyways, that's it. It's a short one. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I'm gonna do the same. I may do more visual symbolism. I may switch to audio symbolism or musical symbolism. Mostly because this end piece that I wanted to make, that's not going to be live. Well, it's going to be live streamed, but it won't be me live doing everything. it uses the same tools as those who use propaganda, because there's a lot of visual symbolism and there's a lot of auditory symbolism that's used in order to elicit emotional responses from the unconscious, and that's where you can easily be misled. I mean, you watch something, you watch some material by the government, right? You can see this all the time with military ads, right? Join the Marines or the Army, be all that you can be, those types of things. And then it's also there for music and certain musical sounds, I should just say. Also lists something that's, I hate to say primal, but I'm just going to say primal. I mean, drums is an easy example. Like, you can't really reverberate the drum sound as much as like a bass of a cello or a bass or violin or string instrument, or even like a piano. It has even less resonation than something like a trumpet or something like that. But you can easily, it has its beat, it has its what do you call it? It's like a tempo, right? Just like your heartbeat. Your heartbeat rises. I mean, it's your heartbeat is a drum beat, basically. I mean, if you can listen to it or listen to someone else's, it's just gonna be a thump 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 thump. And then the faster that you want some form of event, like you want the person to just elicit a response of just being ready and being just like ready to go, amped up type of thing, right? You're gonna just have a faster thump 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 or thump 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 thump, right? But if you want to have just a slower response, like things are slowing down, but it's something's being ready to occur, it's gonna be just a dumb. It's like Jaws. Jaws is a great example. So, anyways, that's gonna be my. That would be titled "Audio Symbolism Drums," just to put it something like that. And I'm just gonna give examples and how it just kind of, what does it really reflect onto you, and it's it'd be fun to test out. Of course, it's not gonna ever happen. Hopefully someone does. Maybe someone who's like into science will use it as a test that they can do. Is someone who watches a movie with a certain sound, with music, or okay, let's take it this way. I've got a there's songs that are made before a movie is made and people listen to it, and then some movie comes along, makes that and uses that song, and for people who watch that movie, that song is now associated with that movie, especially if they like that movie and especially that part with that sound in it, the song in it. If you have someone that doesn't have that didn't watch that movie but still listen to that song, they're not going to have that same emotional and conscious response, right? This is the whole beginning of what I was talking about. It has to have some form of exposure to that symbol in order for that symbol to have any meaning and power over that individual, or it can give power to the individual. It's again, symbols are tools, where to provide power or to use it as control. It's just like good and evil, freedom and control. The other thing is visual. It's the same thing. When you're reading words, when you're reading a book, right? When you read the descriptions of a book for the characters or even a place, it's sometimes it may be detailed, but it's not like so detailed down to like the very minute aspects, right? A lot of it can the reader's imagination can formulate from the descriptions that's provided in that book, to fashion that character in their minds. Now, if someone watches a show or a movie based on that book, or after you've read it and then you watch the movie too, once you go back and read the book, most of the time the characters are no longer fashioned from what your mind can conjure up, I guess. It's basically whatever you remembered from that story, from the show or the movie. So a lot of these things you've got to keep in mind. It's a form of symbolism. It's just, yeah, it's giving you what you can take it as a form of control and accept it, or you can reject it and utilize your own aspect of it. And that usually comes across both ways. Neither good or bad. Sometimes, it's what's preferable. For example, let's take popular culture with Star Wars, the Disney trilogy. You've got a lot of people who go, I don't really accept the new trilogy, the episode 7, 8, or 9 as canon. It's just like, I choose not to accept it. That wasn't Luke Skywalker. That wasn't any of the characters that they would associate, think how it would end up turning out to be, those things. And then they've read a lot of the legend books, right? Things that aren't canon, and they go, I would much prefer, how things went with like Mara Jade and that stuff. So yeah, anyways, that's it for this video. Sorry I segue a lot, but it's just to discuss what may be coming up in the next video or in the future videos. There's still videos I want to do, but again, I just go with the flow. I don't have something that I was adamant of doing, and if I'm no longer interested in it, or I just don't see value in it, to just do it anyways. So you'll have to bear with me. And of course, none of my videos are really short, and they don't really have a lot of music to it. And there's a reason why. It doesn't have many sound effects. There's a reason why. It doesn't have many static material that I go off of. Today's the exception. And there's a good reason why, because I don't want to utilize those tools to have a controlling effect on you, even though this is a controlling effect using 2D representation, symbolism, words, right? There's always going to be some form, but I don't want to use some like a type of propaganda in order to influence your emotional responses, which I will do later, but in a good way. It's rather to, instead of instilling fear, anger, hate, or things that you might be more negative and you want things to be a lot more controlled, I want to provide joy, happiness, laughter, hope, things that are associated with more positive, more freedom-esque, free will connotations. So thank you. Have a good night, and I'll see you another night.